What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Love Music More. This is Scoobert Dubert. We are going to be chatting with Mike Post from MooseCat Recording. Mike is a really cool guy who works as a producer, recording engineer, has his own studio, MooseCat, in LA, and he's worked with some of the greatest in the industry, including Local Natives, She and Him, Orion's Son, Wild Reeds, and Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper, that's awesome. Before we get into that, we've got DistroKid as our title sponsor, and I want to give them their shout out because they're awesome. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists get to keep 100% of their royalties and earnings. And you can sign up with our code for 30% off. It helps the pod and helps grow your career at distrokid.com/VIP/lovemusicmore. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music onto Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the other major streaming services. And one of the things I love about DistroKid is I'm able to do everything on my app, check out my new releases, pull out my splits, send things to collaborators so that they're able to get their money and we're able to get everything going. So yeah, DistroKid's awesome. Highly recommend them. And be sure to use our code for 30% off, distrokid.com/VIP/lovemusicmore. Enjoy the episode with Mike. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Love Music More. I am Scoobert Dubert, and I am joined with Mike Post from MooseCat Recording. What's up, Mike? How
What's going on, Scoop? Thanks so much for having me today.
So glad to have you. One of my favorite things to talk about is the recording process because it is the lab. It is the quiet space, devoid of fans, devoid of noise, where you try and craft what you're going for. And it's the place where you make mistakes, where you feel embarrassed, but where you also like transcend. And so I love talking to people that with that studio experience. I see the studio behind you. Excited to dig in, man.
Yeah, likewise. I always love talking about anything and everything related to music. So
where are you located right now? Can you tell us a little bit about MooseCat and how you got started there?
Yeah, absolutely. So been running MooseCat Recording here in Mid-City LA.
Nice.
Since about 2016 now.
Cool.
So we're like kind of a analog focused recording studio. Definitely running Pro Tools and everything like that, but have a mid-70s Auditronics console, run a lot of tape. So we have 2 rooms here now. We just finished. We have our main Studio A, which has live room, control room. And then our second room that we just finished is like an Atmos, production and Atmos mixing room. So yeah, two rooms here on site. And yeah, I've been doing music for as long as I can remember and just trying to, produce and engineer friends' bands coming up that way. And just, ever since I was a teenager. So always, happy to have the studio as a place for artists to come and try to make great music. And yeah.
I love that. And I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about Dolby Atmos. I think that's a super interesting topic. And then also just creating that vibe for musicians that come in. But before we kind of get there, I'd love to talk about your musical journey, kind of how you ended up pointing your ship towards recording and then Los Angeles. How did you get the bug? What hooked you on music?
Yeah, I mean, just from a young age, I was just a fan first of just
cool.
Obsessed with music somehow. I don't know.
Were there any standouts in your mind as a child that you're okay, that did you hear a hair metal and you're I want to do that? Did you hear jazz? You're about that. What was there anything that was special?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it was genre specific.
Cool.
I don't know, just I don't know. I was just always hooked.
Love it.
But definitely, as a teenager, listening to a lot of punk and pop punk in the 90s, 2000s. I grew up on Long Island, so
yeah,
tons of bands coming up through there, and a great thriving local scene at that time. So
totally,
definitely set the stage. And my dad played guitar a little bit, so there were always guitars around the house. I was just one day I was just oh, what is this thing? Let me try to pick this thing up. And so just started there. But even before that, I was trying to kind of write songs in a very odd way, so just always hit I don't know, tough to explain why, but just you know, kind of, you know, felt like that was just had a sort of calling to work on music and to try to make music. And you know, like pretty early on, I would say when I was still in high school, I kind of made the decision that I was gonna like try to be an engineer. And I figured it was a little bit more realistic than you know, trying to be an artist and do the band thing, which I was doing still do. But you know, I was like, let me try to put a few more eggs into this basket. That's, you know, it's fun, and you know, definitely, you know, very super passionate about making records. And I was like, you know, a couple bad experiences, right? Like going to a studio and spending a ton of money, and then like not being thrilled with the result. And I was like, I could do this easily, you know, better than these guys. So yeah, that's kind of where things got started.
I like that. And I also like the thing about access. Like every house should have a guitar or a piano or something, just so that the kids in your family can have like that thing that they could be called to, you know?
Yeah. It's almost like you know, passed down or something. Not that my family was ever like super, you know, nobody was like professional or anything like that. But I think more so just like having the music around, and like both my parents are like huge fans of music, and you know, like in New York, they went to CBGB and all the place, you know, like seeing all these bands and stuff. So they were always super into live music too, which was a big thing. So, you know, they would take me to see stuff like at a young age. So, yeah, it's ingrained.
Yeah, I love that. I actually just did a podcast with a guy named Andy Chernoff, who played CBGB all the time, and it's
nice.
I love those kind of anchor points, those places that it's like you're talking about the pop punk scene in Long Island, like these moments in time that catalyze genre and then have fan bases that are associated with it, and it can all just kind of like turn into the next thing. And I'm so fascinated about how that is transforming now, whether or not it will be tied to physical space or virtual space or some sort of combination. Sometimes I worry that music is like too diffuse. Like I look at my audience numbers and they're all around the world, which is super cool. Don't get me wrong. But there's also kind of that feeling of like, okay, where's my regional center though? Like, where do I go play? I don't really know.
Yeah, it's sort of a little bit more spread out now, which is, you know, both good and bad, right? Totally. Like you kind of have you know, the scenes still exist, I think, but yeah, maybe it's like a few people here in this city, a few people here in that city. So you can obviously find your audience like a little more niche in that way, but there's something cool about like those days. Yeah, I was thinking, it's like, how did it just happen where like there were all these bands making such a similar sound? Like, what is like the psychology behind like how that happens? Like, you know, it's obviously it's influences and this, but it's just like that moment in time and the certain regions and stuff, how it's just like all this stuff just happening at the same time, and it's like a phenomenon.
Yes,
it's really interesting however that comes to be. I don't know. It's probably got to be tied to human nature in some way, but
absolutely. And like David Byrne's book, I thought he put out a pretty cool hypothesis on that tied to venues.
Okay.
Or like personnel. So like if a bunch of people have like Muscle Shoals or something like that is like one example of like a studio world where you have like the same kind of personnel that are playing in a smaller city. And so everybody that's kind of playing there and recording there start to like develop a certain sound, and then it gets popular. Or you look at CBGB where that's like a specific venue and it's certain kinds of music sounds good there and plays well with the regulars there. And so that kind of like creates its own momentum where the people that are successful are the ones that play well to that crowd in that room, and then they get more dates, and then it just kind of spirals, and then you have at least a loose idea of a sound or a genre or a vibe.
Totally.
And like basement shows, you know, like I think about the grunge stuff where grunge music makes sense in a basement. Like you're hitting stuff. There's not a ton going on. There's not a bunch of synths or whatever. There's not a ton of notes. It's like, it's powerful, and it's like something you want to be sweaty and listening to and like kind of rubbing up against people. Same thing with like pop punk. Like there's like a certain energy that you're trying to cultivate out of the audience. And I think that energy ends up feeding the genre almost more than the genre feeds the energy.
Totally.
Maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely something to that. And just like the limitation too, obviously like going down to just like, guitar, right? Like so accessible. and like everybody could go pick that up, like even before my time at Sears or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Like you didn't need a whole piano or you didn't need a whole orchestra or whatever. Like,
totally. And it's portable and it's cool. Like, I still think that the guitar, like playing guitar on stage will always be cool. You're more mobile than the drummer, which is arguably the cooler instrument. But at least the guitar is like, you can go into the audience and play with them. Like, you have that portability, that in your faceness of like just this magic weapon. It's awesome.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I always wanted, like, I'm funny, like I wanted to be a drummer, but it's like, like, you know, you got to have the space to do it, and you got to have, you know, people who are willing to put up with you making noise for.
Yep. No, I believe me, I know. I've got that thing back there, but I can't play it at all hours. And it's like this is my first indoor drum kit I've ever had, because of this. I don't have a shared wall back here it's all the way on the other side.
That's huge.
So I can, at least within some reasonable hours, make some noise on my kit.
Yeah, that's a revelation.
Yeah, it is. So how did you like identify engineering as that thing that you wanted to put more eggs into that basket? So you said you went into the studio where you were a little let down by you were watching the way that these engineers were working, let down by the output. What did you do next? Did you try to intern? Did you try to, you know, get your own home recording rig? What was your next step?
Yeah, it was both for sure. I think it started with a home recording rig. Like I had like a Tascam, like a digital recorder. I had the 4-track stuff too, so I was doing that even before that, but for demos. But then I got like a digital recorder. You know, this is probably like, I don't know, 2000, 2001, something like that, maybe 2002. So yeah, I was just like starting. All right, it's like, yeah, I could what we just spent on the studio for the day, I could get this mixer, this recording device, and like a couple microphones, and just try it and see, you know, we could spend more time doing it. So it definitely came from like, all right, let's like record my music, you know, that way.
I still justify stuff that way.
Yeah.
It's like, I could go into the studio, or, you know, I could buy that microphone and get a little more sound treatment, or
totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Then I was just super drawn to like the whole process of, you know, and like you said, like that feeling of just being in the studio and like, you know, just working and finding sounds and like, you know, making something sound better and better, or just like seeing the whole thing come together. It's like a drug or something. I don't know.
Totally. It so is. And it's great too, because you can fail, you can make mistakes, but no one will know. They only hear the final recording, which is sometimes what I get stressed out with, like references if you're like trying to hit like a certain type of drum sound. It's like, yo, I'm listening to like a mastered, mixed, finished thing, and I am on take 1. It's like there are a lot of steps for me to get from here to there. It's a little unfair sometimes, but no one needs to know.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe those mistakes are baked in, and you wouldn't see it as a mistake. But
That's a good point. Right, that's a really good point. So okay, so you get your Tascam recorder. Do you do any sort of like intern or apprenticeship kind of work? Do you have like mentors? Cool.
I probably did maybe 5-6 different internships.
Whoa.
I did one in New York. I did one in Boston, where I went to school at Northeastern. Then I came out to LA like for a couple of different times. For a summer, for like 6 months, I came out here like during school to like do an internship. Then I came back out again, and then I moved here.
What were the vibes like between the different studios and the places? Like, did you have a feeling like, oh, this feels like more like what a New York studio feels like, a Boston studio, a LA studio, or was it just kind of more just, you know, person to person, people you're working with?
I think more just like studio to studio. Less so than, you know, every studio has its own vibe and its own setup. You know, some are like more accessible, and some give you a little bit more like, hey, here's the keys. You know, some are more like, you know, wait in the lobby. So you just try to kind of make your way in. I just was like just dying to learn as much as I could, and I think you know, it was nice when I could also use the studio sometimes to you know, make those mistakes on my own time, as well as, you know, get to witness other people working and, you know, at a high level. So I did that as long as I could and as much as I could, and worked for free for, you know, probably a cumulative amount of, you know, a criminal amount of time.
Yes.
Even when I moved out to LA, I still was doing that, you know, for a little while, and just trying to get my foot in the door. And then it got to a point where I was like, getting hired for certain gigs, and I would start to reach out to like engineers and producers that I like really admired. And I linked up with the producer Raymond Richards, who I worked for him like out of his studio for about 5 years, and just learned,
cool.
really learned how to cut my teeth, and watching him like the whole process of like start to finish. And he kind of took me under his wing. So just having a few mentors like that, as well as I had another mentor, Peter Malik, who I worked at his studio, and he did the same thing with me, and just really took me under their wings, and kind of like was like, just watching people on a day-to-day basis, who like have made records that you love, right? Like it's like, oh, it's eye-opening. I think it's still eye-opening for me to just even go into a big studio and just see the spaces and be like, oh, okay, like, here's how they got that incredible sound. Like, you go into any of the major studios and you're like, oh yeah, I get how they did this now. Look at this room. This, like, you can, set up one mic in this room and it sounds insane. Like, it's like, we try to like, it's a mystical thing, but then when you kind of like see, how the cooking is done a little bit, you sort of be like, oh, okay, yeah, I could do that. I think I could take this little piece from this place and this person and apply it to my own taste.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. What's good, guys? Scuba Dubert here for the Love Music More podcast, and I want to let you in on a little secret. One of my favorite new things, Minuendo lossless earplugs. So these are really, really, really cool. I've got 2 of them here. It comes in this awesome sweet box, but it comes with a bunch of little goodies like carrying case, tether, cleaning tools. But the real tech is in these little tiny lossless earplugs. My favorite thing about it is, one, you can swap out any of the included tips. So depending on the size of your ear canal, we're all built different. You can get a nice, comfortable fit. But there's also this little lever on these adjustable versions that can go from 7 to 25 decibels of cutting. So depending on if you're listening to new metal or jazz, you can just hit the little lever and adjust in real time. And I think that's really, really cool. For the longest time, I was listening in those awful foam earplugs, and it makes the music sound like that. It just cuts off all of those high frequencies. And so I was always tempted to sneak them out a little bit. Oh, it's my favorite song. No earplugs. And then you get hearing damage. You have tinnitus after the show, and then you come back, you want to work in the studio, and guess what? Your ears aren't right. And that's why I love Minuendo, because you can just pop these in and have full fidelity with these lossless earplugs. There are 2 different versions. One is adjustable with the little lever, and then this one is fixed at 17 decibels. So check out Minuendo, Minuendo.com, or you can search them on Amazon and find Minuendo earplugs today. Get cracking. And I like the idea too of start to finish, because I think it's easier to be like, to think, okay, I know what to do on recording day. But to know what to do on recording day in order to have a good mix, like those things are very different and far more valuable, rather than just like an isolated, I set up mic, someone else does the rest of the work,
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's still stuff I'm always trying to be like, to adjust and make those adjustments for like, okay, I mixed, here's what happened when I got to the mix. It's like, okay, how can I improve on the other stage to make it even better when I go into mix and make it easier to get to the place that you want to get.
Exactly.
So
which is a really hard thing, I think, for young or like starting, don't have to be young to be starting, recording engineers, is sometimes being afraid to do stuff. But like, if you start identifying that you always do this in the mix, it's like, maybe just do it on the front end when you're recording, or like if you're always reaching for this, like maybe give it some juice, some sauce right in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, always the best mixes are the ones that sounded the best from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, always. It's like, did it sound amazing right in the room? Like, then it's going to probably sound pretty good on the mix. Like, if it didn't sound that good, it's like, to begin with, it's probably not going to sound that good even after, even if you make it marginally better or whatever, and you mix it as best you can or whatever, it's, there's no replacement for that at the source, great musicianship, great room, great, sounding recording, right?
Totally.
So that's like, once you kind of learn that, then you'll start to, I think, really improve the whole quality of everything.
I totally agree. And I think it also allows you to have more control on what the actual output is. One thing that I had issues with was recording, especially kick drums. Still difficult, can be very difficult. It's a lot of frequencies going on, a lot of dynamics going on. And I kept being really frustrated because I would get mixes back and be like, that just doesn't sound right. It was because the mix engineer was like sound replacing the kick and, doing stuff because he was like, I can't work with this. And so, but like having that conversation and getting to know, okay, the mix engineer and then becoming a mix engineer myself, it was like a lot easier to be like, okay, that's what I'm doing wrong. Okay, this is what I need to add. Or like maybe I'll sound replace it on my end rather than like giving such trash to the mix engineer that he has to take it on himself.
Totally making it like, all right, here's really what I want it to sound like before it even gets to that point to let somebody else clean up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Looks like you have the head off on that.
I do. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
This is a weird kit. It's like a Yamaha mini custom. So like all of the shells are super, super small. I'm actually gonna explore taking off the reso heads on the toms too to see if I can get kind of like that 70s thing on it. But it's a pretty weird beast. I still haven't fully wrapped my head around recording that guy yet. But that's what the next record's for,
Yeah. Oh, it's always the next record. Yeah. Awesome. What's in there too? I see. It looks like something's inside.
Yeah, there's a little pillow.
Okay. I thought it was like a dope. Yeah. Sometimes I'll throw like a cinder block or something in there.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I've done that too. I've got some bricks downstairs that I'm gonna try next time I record it. Throw some bricks with the pillow and see if I can get like a really kind of sound.
Love it.
Especially since a lot of my music is pretty electronic. It's trying to figure out why am I adding drums? It's not necessarily adding drums as the centerpiece or the focal point. It's like adding drums as interest or something to sample or like tops, like using electronic stuff as the kick snare, kind of like foundation and then adding in ghost notes, like that. That's kind of the way I'm trying to think of the kit. That's part of the reason why I didn't spend a whole bunch of money getting like a really big, awesome rock kit because I don't think I'm going to do a lot of that here,
Yeah, just kind of like a hybrid. Yeah, man. That's what I loved about, all your stuff, man. It has that kind of synergy between like the surreal and the real. Yeah.
Cool. That's exactly what what I'm going for. So I'm so glad it's landing. But I think this is also another good example of, thinking of what you're going to end up doing on the output and then affecting the input to get there. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, it's so easy to just be like, I'll get the nicest thing. But it's like, is that what you're going for? Is that the genre? Is that the vibe? Like maybe, but maybe not,
Yeah. You might just need one mic to get that sound rather than, a full look at the whole kit.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like it's the Tame Impala kind of vibe because I'm sort of in his family tree of genre. Sure. And he records a bunch of stuff with like 2-3 mics.
Yeah.
Why not?
Outside, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right?
Yeah. I love that.
It's awesome. Why not?
Yeah, that's the dream right there.
It is. It's so
totally isolate. I mean, I think I say like outside could have the best acoustics like out of anything as long as there's no like other sound happening. But
right. Yeah, or angry neighbors.
The wind might have something to say about that.
Yeah, exactly. You build a studio inside of a volcano, covered on all sides.
Don't tempt us.
Yeah, it'd be pretty metal. So I want to talk about kind of like the decisions from your previous experience working with incredible producer engineers, doing internships, kind of like building your chops. What learning kind of influenced this studio and the way you wanted to develop it, the way you wanted to build it, the gear you wanted to prioritize? How did you do that to make the space of your dreams or of your own?
Yeah, sure. I guess it, just the same kind of thing as recording, like picking a piece of like everything that you liked, and just like, I would say like the whole place is just sort of like, for better, for worse, I like curated for my taste, cool. Like it's tough to like try to what other people are going to like. I think thankfully like most of the stuff that I have like people like a lot as well. So but like I feel like if I don't use something for like a certain amount of time, I'll just get rid of it and get something else. So always kind of like doing that trade up thing too.
Yeah.
Like that's what I've been doing since I was 13, right? Like I had a computer, whatever, and an interface, and then I would sell that one, and I would get the next thing, and just like trading up, until somehow I got the studio with all this great gear.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything in here for the most part is stuff that I adore, or like that I use on every session almost. Not every instrument, but the recording gear is going to be stuff that I use all the time. So it's stuff that I just whittling down over the years, and just being like, oh yeah, I haven't touched that guitar in a year. I think I don't probably need it anymore. So
right.
trying to like incorporate everything into the workflow and have it be like, a choice piece that will get used here and not just sits around. But yeah, I think just following my own gut, as far as like, oh yeah, that seems like something that I need. And then of course it's like, there's also like, trying to do it on the cheap, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
I don't have a Neve console or anything like that. So I have to have, Neve clones that, I have like the 7th Circle Audio, rack that gets me my extra, 7-8 preamps that sound amazing, but they didn't cost a ton. So trying to keep within that sort of limitation too. And just always looking also, like I'm like heavy on like Craigslist, eBay back in the day, especially, like just going to people and finding stuff that's like, oh, this was like super cheap. I'll try it out. If I love it, I'll keep it. If I don't, I'll try to flip it.
Yeah, especially in LA. The amount of gear that's on like Craigslist stuff in LA is pretty incredible sometimes.
Yeah.
Because studios will shut down or whatever.
Yeah, you can find some deals. You just got to be, obsessed. Yeah. If you're obsessed, like, oh yeah, I'm always on Facebook Marketplace. Like, oh, why somebody? It's like found like a holy grail pedal. It was like somebody selling it for $15. I was like, I already have one, but I'm gonna go get this other one too, because why not? It's like it's a good deal. So always looking for like a good steal.
Yes.
Anytime that comes around. And then also just getting lucky, like a lot of times, like with acquiring gear, or just like making good transactions with friends or whatever, who want to leave stuff here sometimes.
Yeah.
Stuff like that too. So I think it's just like trying to, and of course, like I have my own taste too, of just the type of music that I generally work on, which is more in the indie vein. I don't have a ton of like quote unquote, like, I don't have like a Sony C800, right? Like, it's not like the one chain that it's going to be, hey, this is what it is every time. I like to have a little more of a variety for like different styles. And kind of be ready for almost anything.
Let me look up how much a Sony C800 costs, just for the listeners' perspective.
We're probably talking 12. I mean, a vintage older one. I don't know, 12 to 15 at least.
I see a used one. This is on Reverb for $12,500.
Not bad.
Not bad, right? just for the listeners. That microphone is like the hip hop and pop microphone. The if you're trying to be on top 40 radio. I've used so I bought a new Universal Audio kind of like brain to run the studio, one of the new Apollos, and it came with for free one of their Sphere modeling microphones, which I never would have bought.
Sweet.
And it has a C800 that sounds pretty good. I've used it on a couple recordings.
I bet it does. Yeah. No.
It's super bright. I just did a song. I think the one that I just released this last week was called "Singing for You," and it was like all C800. But it's fun because it sounds like the pop thing, so it makes you sing like the pop thing. Obviously, wouldn't use it for everything, and it obviously does not sound as good as actually having a $12,000 microphone running into a $100,000 desk or whatever.
Right.
But still,
hey man, if it gets you 80% of the way there, it's like if you can make up, if music's good and the melody's good.
Yeah, exactly.
And the voice is good.
The thing that got me was that it unlocked a different kind of performance. That was why I was like, okay, I'm sort of sold, because I wouldn't have sung the way that I sung into this, or into a different microphone.
Sure. That kind of stuff can be inspiring too.
It is. It's weird. It's weird how that is. And it's one of the reasons why I think vocalists should sing with their headphones on more often. I'm curious what your thought is on this, but a lot of young vocalists are like so like this or
do
so
the one
like
ear. Yeah.
yeah, like
I
need to hear.
I
Yeah.
prefer
What do you
just
think?
as a singer, I like the one ear.
You like the one ear? Yeah.
I like the one
Totally.
ear just to hear myself, like, and to feel
For
like the
real.
vibration
Yes.
of like my body or something. And
I agree.
it helps me stay. But and sometimes I do notice like singers like they and I do this too. Like even on guitar, if I hear too much of myself, I get like scared.
Yes,
Like,
so true.
like I
Yeah,
need to
totally.
like fit into the music a little bit
Right.
to really like let loose.
I agree with that.
But if you have a really good headphone mix and it's like all dialed in perfectly, yeah, it's like you're in like it's like a a 3D experience of like it's like you're out of body or something.
Yeah, totally.
But so it could definitely work
it can cut both ways though. I
Yeah.
agree. Like sometimes I'll get too in my head or like thinking too producery as I'm performing. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. But there was like a light bulb moment, and again, I'm doing my own headphone mixes, so I'm doing it exactly the way I want it,
Sure.
And I'm compressing plenty on the way in, and it's like it is sitting in the mix well enough for it to like draw out a performance that like I would want to hear as the producer mixer, which ends up being like a very happy thing. But I had a really hard time. I had to like leave an ear off because I wanted to hear my voice the way I understood my voice to be, just like out in the wild. But that's not ultimately what ends up on the record. What ends up on the record is what comes through the microphone. And like flipping that mentality, for me at least, helped me sing more towards the song, sing more towards the mic, and allowed like a situation like that fake C800 to influence my performance because it's pulling out different like frequencies in my voice. So just naturally, like as I'm speaking, I'm probably speaking with a little more presence because I'm talking into this microphone, you know?
Yeah,
it's weird.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think, and then like if you're hearing closer to what the final thing's gonna be,
yes, exactly,
you could like kind of fit it in the mix a little bit more.
100%.
Yeah,
and like I'll do all the like little subconscious things of like, every microphone captures transients, like the attacks for the listeners, like the transient response of microphones is slightly different. And so I think that, most people that have done a lot of singing with a microphone or whatever will probably subtly shift the way that they're actually hitting those transients based on how it's coming through.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I get stressed out about compression sometimes when I'm recording vocals, because I don't want to like screw it up or mislead a vocalist,
Yeah, that's why I usually just do a little bit. I won't take too much off, just a little bit, and I don't really record with any like plugins on generally.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
Just like straight, preamp, hardware compressor.
Yeah.
It's obviously it makes it easier when like I'm lucky to have a tube tech.
Yes,
So
totally.
It's like it's like tough to make that sound bad.
Yes.
Even if you're taking a little bit more off of it, it's still, it almost gives you like that more finished type of sound when you have like that a crazy good vocal chain, right? Like
for sure.
It's almost like what you were talking about, just with the hardware. It's like, oh yeah. I sound like a professional.
Exactly. Which is so important. Yeah. It's easier to give a professional performance if you sound like a professional.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't like to be scared. Like when when anybody's singing like they're scared.
Yes. And the thing about guitar is so real too. I've had gigs like that have been hard where like the amp is like facing right at me, or the onstage volume is too high. And so you can't really hear anybody but yourself. And it's just a very naked, weird kind of experience. And I know some guitarists like it because like they got like the double half stack. And for certain genres of music, like you're playing AC/DC, like who cares? Like be loud. But if you're playing like in a funk context or a hip hop context or a pop context, it's like I kind of want to tuck in. I want to know the folds of the groove to fit myself. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, just like I think it's like I don't know. It makes me think about it. I like on stage, especially. I don't want to really think. It's like second you start to think about it, you're in trouble. Like I just try not to think and just like. So if I hear too much of, I'm like, oh, is that the note I always play? Yeah. Of course it is. Of course it is. Just shut up and play and just. Let the instinct take over. So trying to find that balance of like, I can hear myself and I fit in, but also like not overthinking it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really good thing. I think a lot about sports psychology and the analogs to like music performance psychology. And this can transition really well into talking about the vibes that you create for the people that come in and record. But I feel like I don't ever want to think, but I have to be present. It's like that equilibrium, like if you're trying to blow like the ball and not have it hit the back of the tube, but never have it hit your lips, like just kind of floating in there. It's that balancing act of present, focused, intense, but not thinking tight, or also like not too loose and just like degaffing,
Totally. Yeah. And a lot of that is like preparation too. It's
Absolutely.
probably like when it comes to sports too, like if you're like conditioned,
Mm-hmm.
like you're gonna like those muscles are gonna like take over and like just let you like do the performance that you need to do without having to break down the mechanics of your vocal performance or your technique. It's like if you're comfortable with your technique, then you don't have to think about the technique. If you think about the technique, you're like not as focused on the song or whatever. So all those things got to like line up like perfectly.
It's probably like golfing. I don't golf, but I bet it's like that.
Yeah. I don't golf either, but it probably is.
I'll get a golfer on here and just
probably harder, but I'm biased.
Sorry to interrupt this very important broadcast, but it's time for one more advertisement for myself for this podcast. What I'm asking for is for you to rate it 5 stars, share it with your friends. This is like the most important thing for this podcast to grow. So if you want to do this, you go onto the podcast screen, right? You click on the ... on Spotify. Under there, it says rate show, and you go and you click it 5 stars. If you could do that for me, that's the best way for the algorithms, all this stuff, to share it out with the world. I know that it's a lot to ask, but if you could please just hit those 3 dots and then a 5 star, it would really help us out and helps us, get the word out and spread the love of music. So thank you. If you're listening on YouTube, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much. And here's the rest of the episode. I'm curious. So if you have somebody into your studio, how do you create the environment or the supportive kind of like situation so that they can give their best performances?
Yeah. So I think luckily, like, at least, and this is like a lot of feedback that we hear, and that just having been in this space for like 8 years, like you can kind of see like out here, we have like a whole outdoor space.
Sick. Yes.
So I like, we like work with the we also have like some light coming in here, like in the studio. So it's not like a deep, dark, like cavernous, like dungeon to make music in.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of like sets the stage and like honestly does half the work. Like, where it's like, oh, people come here and it's like it's a homey vibe, and they just feel comfortable like without us, having to say or do much. Like, so I think that like just setting that environment is like really important, and just like having a place where people just feel like they're at home and just like feel super comfortable to create. And they're not like, sometimes you go to a big studio and it's like the spotlight is on you and you see like the red button come on. Mm-hmm. It's like stage fright, right? So like,
for sure.
Yeah, I think that's what we kind of tried to do that. And my partner and wife, Carly, she curated all that. I can't even take credit for like the whole setup. She was like, we need to have this light coming in. I'm like, how's that going to work with the sound? Like, we need to be soundproof, and and she's like, I don't care. Like, we have to have the light coming in. And that was probably like that and a million other kind of decisions that she made, like, really sort of like made the space like really homey and just like a good vibe where, and people can step outside, catch some fresh air,
totally,
like right here, So I think that's like definitely takes a lot of the load off me having to like make people feel comfortable, like. But then even so, it's just like, just kind of keeping the vibes like professional, but also just like more low key, and just like we're just here like making music and just not trying to put too much pressure on anybody, and just like reminding people, hey, like we're not like, we can always come back to this, or there's no pressure, like just trying to keep the pressure off and just make it seem like it's just like a normal, like you're at rehearsal or you're at whatever, just like I think like, and not like having to be like, oh, hey, your time's about to be over right now,
right.
And like, if you don't get this vocal line, you're screwed forever, like, I think just, so I don't know, I think like I'm pretty like a laid back person, like, so hopefully like that people can kind of feel that, and just like, just like, again, just trying to keep the pressure off. And also I think the preparation thing too is really big. Like, I always try to like, even if it's just like a 1 day session or something, like I'll try to be really familiar with like the person's music. And we'll have like conversations ahead of time where I'm saying, hey, send me some demos. Like, even if it's a phone demo, like I want to know what the song sounds like. I want to like know what your, kind of your vision is. And like, I'm here to like help like facilitate that. And like, so just for me, like being comfortable with the music, like, sometimes it still happens where it's like, oh, I didn't have a demo or whatever, or the person, it's like a last minute booking or something, and they show up and I have no idea what we're doing. But I try to avoid that at all costs, because like I know what that's like to like walk into a studio and like have the engineer be completely clueless to like what your music is like.
Totally.
And like, oh, I've never even heard this. I've not only have I never heard you, but like I'm not familiar with this style of music at all. And like I think everybody's like been there where and they just sit there and they just hit record, right? And you're like, like you're just like unsure about everything.
Yes.
So creating like an environment where like artists can feel confident and just sure that they're like doing the right thing and going in that right direction. I think that's like, kind of been our approach here. And, always like kind of like, even just the setup preparation too, like being like 2 steps ahead of everybody. Like, oh, I think that they might, even as an assistant, this is something I learned, like, that's how you get to, if you're an assistant and you want to become the engineer, like be 2 to 3 steps ahead of even the engineer. Like, do you think somebody's going to need a cable dropped here? Like, make sure that you have something waiting in the wings just in case. Like, try to anticipate. And I try to tell like anybody who interns here, like, that's the biggest thing. Anticipation of like what's going to happen next, or what could happen next.
Yes.
And just being like ready for that moment. Like, and like, it still gets the best of me sometimes. Like, sometimes they're like, oh, hey, we're going to do this now and blah, blah, blah. Like, we need this setup. And like, something comes out of left field. Like, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Like, you're going to have to pivot all the time, but just as much as you can be prepared. And, so like for my session tomorrow, right? Like we're setting up everything today. I'm going to like have every little nook and cranny, ready to go. So when the artist walks in, it's like, they feel like, oh, all right, we're ready to, we'll not only, and there's not a lot of waiting around either. Cause I've been in those cases too, where especially at bigger studios that don't have equipment or they don't have the drum set, you got to wait for the guy to come with the drums, and they start putting up every piece, and that drum sounds weird. Let's spend 3 hours tuning this floor tom, right? Like having like a nicely tuned kit and guitars that are that work and are set up and can be used, and they're not just like show pieces. Like amps that work, microphone, testing all your cables, make sure like all the stuff that we've all been there and can derail like a session and just kill the vibe and kill the momentum. Just all that stuff like is super important. So like anything you can just do ahead of time so that when you're on the day of the session, it just makes your life easier, and it just makes everybody like feel like comfortable, like, and makes them feel like you know what you're doing too. Like,
right.
Even whether you do or you don't, right? Like,
gotta play the part.
Like make it seem like that you're prepared. Like,
exactly. So it sets everyone else at ease. Exactly. I totally agree. And there will always be curveballs. There will always be problems to solve.
Oh yeah.
One of my mentors, he said that the recording day is just linear problem solving. Just like, this went wrong. Okay, let's solve that. And now next thing in the chain.
Totally can be. And all that stuff, it takes away from the music.
It does.
It can totally kill the whole day. Like, I've been to, like, when early on in the studio, I think we had, like, we're like, okay, I was with my band. So it was like, because I would, like, when we were troubleshooting the room too, like, I'd be like, let me just do as many sessions here, like with especially my stuff as I can.
Smart.
Just to like work out the kinks. It was like, what is that noise that just, and like literally like we got like one basic track done on the entire day, right? Like, so, and especially you go to a big studio, like, you don't, especially people are coming here and they're spending their like, what little money usually that they have to like be in on a passion project of their music, and they don't get a lot of chances to like come into a studio and pay for studio time. So
Right.
it's really important for me and for us here to make that experience like not only, fun and worthwhile, but and special, but to also like come away with it with, a productive amount of work.
Yes. And I think that is the answer to your previous self's question of like, why didn't it sound good? Like, why did I leave that room that was such a good room with such good gear and pros? And you're like, meh.
Yeah.
It's all of those things combined.
Yeah.
Because I had that experience too, where you leave a studio, it's like millions of dollars, and you're on an SSL board, and all the mics are vintage. You're like, the demo kind of had more vibe.
Yeah.
It's so disappointing. You don't ever want to be there. I'd love to talk a little bit more about gear and technology and then make our way to your Atmos room. But before we get there, any bits of gear that you just want to kind of geek out on, or things that you're like, I'm obsessed with this, whatever tool it might be?
No, you know what? Yeah. Like, as much as I love gear, like the longer I do this and the more I do it, like the less I feel like I'm less of a gearhead.
That's a good answer.
Which is
cool.
Which is crazy for like somebody who has like, as much stuff as I do. And I've, sort of made that my life's work of like finding cool gear and like acquiring it. But yeah, I mean, the more I do it, like the less I'm like, oh, okay, like, the best records like that I've made it doesn't always come down to the gear or the setup. Like, like some of the coolest stuff I've made, like is like unaffected, by the gear, I think. So I think for me, just trying to put more of like, more into like, just, the songs and the melody, and like, that's like me, that's where I like, am like putting more of my focus. And that's probably easy to say for somebody who has like, like a fully fledged like professional studio. Right, I have that luxury now. I don't have to think about it. Yeah, of course. Like I have everything I need. It's like, if I can't make something great with this stuff, like there's no piece of gear that's going to necessarily like save me.
Right.
But that said, like I'm always looking for ways to get better on the margins, like with that stuff. But
totally.
I'm trying to think of any like one piece, or like kind of like one piece that I like couldn't live without or something, or like
sure, yeah. You can take it however you want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like more like for like maybe even like feeling like inspired to like write or to play on like I have like a Wurlitzer electric piano, like that is cool. Like if I had to pick like one or two things like that, and like my Jazz Master that I've had forever, like those are like, they just like fit my fingers, like I don't know how else to describe it. Like I can't even like there's certain things that I wrote on like that guitar that I just couldn't even play on other guitars, like
totally.
So it's like stuff like that like almost becomes like a little bit of an extension of you, like stuff that if I didn't have all this, I would still have to keep those pieces around, just for musical sake. But yeah,
that actually really aligns with the way that I think about things too, where there's like marginal benefit to gear, where it's like, oh, like your interface has a crappy converter and like crashes all the time. It's like, you improve that, your life is changed.
Yeah.
It's like everything is great and I feel unstoppable. You go from like one really nice preamp to like another one that's like also really nice, but maybe like got a little bit better components. It's all like made in America. It's like, oh yeah, that's better.
Right. Is it going to change the quality of the music that you make? No.
Right. Or like getting a good computer. Oh my God.
That I would say actually that like I was running like a Mac Tower, like 2012 thing up until I want to say maybe like a year and a half ago. And then we got like a Mac Studio, and that was like, that's the best upgrade ever. Cool. Because like, like you can't have a mix being printed and it just stops.
I know. Oh.
And then, or like, that stuff like that, or like, God forbid, like I would be like nervous, like running that machine, like if it's like an hour long, even like a podcast or something.
Right.
Like it got to the point where it's like, you can't have this thing stop in the middle.
No.
Like that's
way.
So stuff like that. It's like, there's got to be like a bare minimum of like, working environment. Like
Right.
I'd be like towards the end of the life of that computer, I was like more stressed out about that than anything.
Totally.
It's like out of your control. Like I can't. So I was like, yeah, it was like totally probably a little past time to get an upgrade there. But yeah, that kind of stuff that just makes your life easier, or just like helps you get there quicker, or just like, yeah, it just takes away those like sort of extra problems.
Yes.
Are worth a lot more to me than like an upgraded preamp at this point.
Yeah.
But again, easy for somebody to say who has like two BAE 1023s that like already is like the baseline. It's like, would I love a vintage Neve? Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
like, and I dream about it, but you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's that marginal. You kind of like you kind of hit that asymptote, and you're still gaining, but it's not quite as much as gaining from like my computer crashes every 15 minutes.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's like pretty detrimental to.
And I like the other thing you said too about tools that inspire different things. I think that's also another really good like thing to latch onto. I feel the same way with my guitars, where sure, there are more guitars that I could have that would do different tones. That's a little less important than like the shape of the neck and the things I choose to play when I hold that guitar versus that guitar.
Totally. Yeah, shape of the neck. That's a good way to good way to say it, because totally. And it might not be like the nicest thing ever. Like it doesn't have to be. It could just be something that you feel comfortable with, that you feel like, is inspiring to you, or is something that, just some magic comes out when you're playing that thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I'd love to hear about your Dolby Atmos room, kind of what inspired you to go there, how you set it up, and then how it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is like a pretty new thing for us here.
Cool.
I think we probably just finished it maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And yeah, like we just have like a friend and partner who's like really into that world, and like he's an amazing like engineer and mix engineer, and has really done some of like the biggest like Dolby mixes like that have been out to date.
Awesome.
So
wow.
Just trying to learn some stuff from him, and he kind of got us into the idea. And at the same time, I also wanted to have like a second like Studio B that could just be like overflow, or even just like mix printing room, or just like like another studio that if somebody was renting this one, I could be in there, or we could have an assistant in there. Or whatever, like I don't know, just an overflow room. So it was like, okay, we could do that, and we might as well like kind of outfit it for Atmos. Too. So we just like, and we had kind of been looking for like maybe even an alternate location to like build another studio for the last couple of years, and it was just like, this is like not gonna this is just like impossible, like it's never gonna work, like the overhead on like any decent studio space, it just like doesn't make it feasible. So we're like, why don't we just build like another room in the this office that we have already? It's like set up, and like we'll make it work, So it took maybe 6 months to like really treat the room, put in the cloud, put in the paneling, get it sounding pretty decent. And then like we have right now, we have like it's like a 714 setup in there.
Cool.
And just using like IK multimedia, like the MTM system speakers, and like a Genelec sub, and sounds really good, man.
Sweet.
Like it's like not necessarily like the world that I come from, like in terms of like even like being something that I thought that I would be super into like as a listener, but like having the room and like listening to music, like especially like well done music in that setup, is really powerful. And like you just hear stuff that you didn't hear before, just as a listener. I was like, oh, this could be cool, but it's like at the end of the day, I'm more of a purist, where I'm like, well, the music still has to be good, right? Like, but yeah, hearing some great mixes in that room, and just just having that, just to learn, for a new horizon, too. So I've been definitely like getting my feet wet with like doing mixes in there, and just doing that setup. And it's just, like an emerging space to something to be a part of, going forward in the music business, is just like something good to have for people to come listen, to do mixes, to do whatever. So, just sort of like in a little expansion of our space here. And it's been something that I've really been enjoying, just to have an Atmos room.
Yeah,
to listen in, man. Like,
for
yeah, just
sure.
hearing good, well mixed, and like just trying to find like, I feel like right now, and you could maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's kind of like there's a lot of stuff mixed for Atmos, but it's not really. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of bare bones
for
of
sure.
like how they do it creatively. So
Hmm.
I think there's this whole other world of like that's obviously been going on, but it's going to expand like just more in the creativity of like what you can do with that kind of setup.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the idea of like made for Atmos versus remixed to Atmos, I think, is a really interesting kind of like lane that is underexplored.
totally, totally. Yeah, it's obviously expanding at a pretty
Yeah,
rapid rate.
for sure.
So yeah, we're happy to be like sort of on the board with it, and
Yeah,
yeah, just trying to learn more stuff. And yeah, I think it's actually going to make me like a better mixing engineer, just even stereo too,
yeah. Okay, cool. That's interesting.
I don't know why, just hearing like how you can separate stuff in that space, and like maybe applying certain techniques and um certain things you can do in that space can just like kind of just bring the whole picture together just across the board sonically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. So
Yeah.
I've got one final question. This is the question we always like to ask our guests. It's a very open-ended question. So again, take this wherever you'd like. The show is called Love Music More. This segment is called Love Music Why. And this is just a moment for you to say, like, why do you keep doing this? Why do you love music? Why does it keep calling you back every day? Like, I get that it's a job, but like, where does the passion come from? What ignites kind of your spirit from music, now and into the future?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's something that you have to kind of keep like asking yourself, like not that I need convincing, but it's at all like, but it's something that I have to keep reminding myself of like the feeling of like being a music listener and like somebody who just enjoys like the feeling of like being taken over by like a song, of
Yes.
like a place that it takes you, right?
Right.
Because like it's easy to get like if you do this every day, it's easy to like and I go in waves of like, oh, I'm really into like the technical aspect of this and that. But especially recently, I've been like, I got to get back to like what that initial like feeling is of just that of the music. Like,
Yeah.
um, so I think it's chasing that feeling, like, and trying to make music that like makes people feel that way. Is kind of what keeps me moving, and also like, I guess just feeling like like I don't feel like I have unfinished business. Like I don't think I've made all the music that I need to make, first of all, and of the quality that I need to make it at. So, gone this far, and it's just like, yeah, it's also like not I don't think I could do I wouldn't be cut out to like do anything else at this point. And I've been doing it for my whole life, so it's just like ingrained in me. But yeah, just trying to like recapture that feeling of like being a teenager listening to music. And it's tougher to get, I feel like, as you get older. And I think that's why like other generations, you hear, oh yeah, I love this music from this time, right? Like it's like your brain only can like take in so much like information like related to music, where you're like, this is it's tougher to like get excited, right? Maybe. So I'm just trying to stay excited about music just as a listener, and finding the music that gets me excited, and just trying to like funnel that into the music that I'm like a part of in different ways. You don't always have like the full control over the music, if you're an engineer, mixing engineer, or a producer even, or so just trying to bring that into whatever role that I'm trying to play um into the music. And yeah, I just feel like I have to just keep doing it, because I just want to get better still. Like, so I'm never sad, like, as like, right, like most musicians, and like we're never satisfied. So I'm far from satisfied.
Love that. Yeah, nobody's more aware of my weaknesses than I am.
Right. Yeah.
I'm under the microscope all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the more you do it, the more I feel like you do get better. And I feel like
Oh yeah,
eventually, like, there's only one place to go, right? Is just to
totally.
try to be one of the best at it.
Hmm.
If you just keep getting better, little bit here,
Yeah.
Like eventually, hopefully you're going to be in that place if you're doing it for the right reasons in the right place. So yeah, man, just gotta
like it.
Keep making music because it's all we can do. I don't know.
Yeah. And I like that too, of like recognizing that things come in waves. You know, it's not always like this part of music that is the most exciting or that part of the music that is the most exciting. And that's okay to be like, I'm in like a more technical thing. I'm in more of like a practicing my instrument or learning a new instrument thing. I'm into more of like an album cycle and trying to create a bunch of stuff. All of these things they're all part of the same like river, but you can't just be in the one lane all the time and feel 100% stoked. Like that is love itself, right? That's in any relationship. That's like, it's the part of the evolution and what you bring to it.
Heck yeah. And I think also, at least for me, is like also trying to more focus on the things that I do feel like I'm the best at.
Yes,
in terms of like all whatever skills that I have. Like, what of these things should I really be spending my time doing and getting better at, where I feel like I can get even better? And then maybe have somebody else do certain aspects, of the process, even like, so, and obviously it's like, there's logistical things, that come along with that, and business things that come along with that too. Like, but like, yeah, just like creatively, like I want to start, more just continuing to focus on the things that I feel like I can really bring something to the table, and not like force, like, oh, hey, I can do this, but like, should I be doing it on every project? Like, let's have somebody else, do the, obviously, I have a guy, a great mastering engineer I work closely with, Will Borza. So I send him all my mastering stuff. Like, eventually I'd love to have somebody who does the mix on every production, so that I'm not doing the whole thing every time, which I love doing too. But like, if I could, focus just on that production side of it, like, or just be the mixer, and kind of just, focus on in whatever part of the process that I feel like I can bring the most to the table.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find us all over the webs. Instagram, we're just MooseCat Recording. You can find us on our website, moosecatrecording.com. You can listen to some of the great artists that have been in there, find out a little bit more about us. Hit us up, come by, check out the space. Anytime. Yeah, I think those are probably the best places to connect.
Love it. And I'll take you up on that next time I'm up in LA. I'm in San Diego, so I'm not far.
Yeah, dude.
But it'd be fun to hang out. Yeah, let's do it.
Please do. Let's do it.
Awesome. Really appreciate the conversation. It was super, super fun.
Yeah, Scoop. Thank you so much for having me, man. It's a real pleasure.
Adios. Thank you.
Peace.